I don't know about you, but it looks like to me, another good guy with a gun stopped the bad guy with the gun.
First, we start with that shooting in Chandler. An Amazon worker in the hospital at this hour after being shot in the parking lot of one of the retailer's warehouses.
The suspected shooter is dead, shot and killed by another Amazon employee. This happened near McQueen and Queen Creek Road.
What was supposed to be a normal workday during one of the busiest times of year for Amazon turned upside down.
Scary. Extremely scary.
Brighton Bobbitt was getting ready to head out to deliver packages around 9:30 Wednesday morning when
all of a sudden just hear pop, 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 and start looking around like, where did that come from? And a few of our other workers started running, so I was already in my work van. I just put it in gear and tried to find a safe place.
Chandler police say a suspect who was not an Amazon employee shot a contracted worker in the parking lot. That victim is in the hospital with multiple gunshot wounds. Another contracted Amazon worker then shot and killed the suspect. That worker was not injured and cooperated with police.
We don't know what our mindset of our shooter was. It's very likely, though, that the contracted employee who returned fire on the shooter could have stopped an active shooter.
This is one thing I'm trying to figure out, though, is how did this guy bring a gun onto the facility in the first place if the Amazon facility is a gun-free zone?
An armed Amazon employee is arrested on the job. The incident happening this morning at the fulfillment center on Pecan Park Road. That's according to the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office.
It's unclear how the man made it on the property with the gun. Employees say staff not using the metal detectors is concerning.
Ah, that's right. It's because gun-free zones don't work. Gun-free zones never work. I've been saying this for decades now. We talked about it over and over. I've given example after example, and yet we have another example of how gun-free zones don't work. Gun-free zones are a placebo effect. They're designed to make you feel safe without actually making you safe, because it really boils down to common logic. If you put a sign on the front of a building and say no guns allowed, the only people who are going to respect that sign, by and large, are the people you're not worried about. The people who you are worried about, the people you don't actually want bringing guns in there, don't care about your sign because they're bringing the guns in there for bad intentions in the first place. They're called criminals. And the only way that you stop criminals from bringing guns into a building is maybe have metal detectors, have some type of pre-screening that actually prevents people from bringing guns in there. Have a security guard that's checking bags and people at the same time. Have metal detectors. And even those aren't foolproof. They're not. The number of times I've gone to different clubs and venues where they were patting people down at the door, but I knew that guy, that guy, that guy, and that guy over there, and even that woman over there had a gun on them is uncountable. I've experienced it over and over again. So even when you think there are no guns in the room, in the words of Young Ma, even when you think they're not around, they're still around. But what's interesting here is the third person. The third person who also had a firearm, who shot this guy and potentially stopped this guy from committing a mass shooting. Now, there is some question as to whether or not this was just a personal incident or whether or not it was someone who wanted to come on there and harm a bunch of people. But the police seemingly also think this might have been a case where this guy was nothing more than a good Samaritan with a firearm, a good guy with a gun, and stopped this bad guy with a gun from committing any other harm. And look how it went down. The only person dead in this situation is the bad guy who had the gun because of the good guy who had the gun. I would dare say, potentially, I could argue that the person who was shot might have actually been dead, but for this good Samaritan with the firearm, and stop this bad person from continuing to shoot this person to the point of where they die. The crazy thing is, this isn't the first time a shooting of this nature has happened at Amazon facilities. They've happened before. So this idea that you think you can stop it by putting a sign up that says no weapons allowed is insane to me. But hey, people want to live in this fantasy world and think that signs on the door or window is going to stop a bad guy with a gun from coming in and shooting up people. Continue to live in this facade. But as for the rest of us out here who respect and understand what the Second Amendment is about, we'll continue to carry our firearms. But people will continue to keep voting for laws that prevent people from carrying firearms. And the funny thing is, this didn't even happen inside of the building. This happened in the parking lot. And that's one aspect of gun-free zones that I also hate and really have a problem with. The places where you're actually most vulnerable a lot of times is going to and from your vehicle. So you go to a lot of these buildings and they're gun-free zones. And once you're inside, okay, let's say they had a metal detector, they had security guards, they had all of those things. But then when you have to walk back to your car, you're vulnerable because you don't have a gun on you because it's in your car. So explain to me, how does that make me safer? It's little things like that that people don't think about when they start voting for the type of laws that will prevent them from carrying guns into certain places. At the beginning of the year, I made it a point to start highlighting these type of self-defense shootings because they don't get reported on to the degree that they should be reported on, except for maybe like on a local level. But we've already established that 60,000 to 3 million people every year use a gun in self-defense, and here's one of them. You think the anti-gun lobby is going to point this out as a self-defense shooting? No, they're going to ignore it, sweep it under the rug, and act like it didn't happen. That's probably why you're not hearing as much about it now as you probably should. You had an individual who stopped another individual from killing another individual. To me, that should be ringing across the headlines every single time, except it doesn't. Anytime you hear about a firearm being used by somebody, generally speaking, especially from the mainstream media, is when it's a bad guy with a gun, and he's killing a bunch of people. And that's what they propagate. That's what they push out there. While all of these thousands and thousands of stories go underreported. The one thing people don't do is understand that at any time you can become a victim. Stop thinking because you're in a safe area. This particular facility was in the suburbs. It wasn't even like it was a bad area. But yet this happened. Things like this can happen at any given moment. And people have got to start understanding that. You are not always safe. And I'm not telling you that you need to run around and be paranoid, but as the saying goes, you're only paranoid if what you're worried about never happens. But if it does, you weren't paranoid. You were prepared. And that's the point that I always want to get across to people. I'm not saying you need to live in utter fear every single moment of the day. But when you have something like a firearm, when you can carry a handgun on you without even thinking about it, it's just part of your daily routine. It's just on your person. How big of a deal is that? You can go about living your life as normal. I just so happen to have a gun on me. So that in the event when my guard may have been slightly dropped and now I'm confronted with a situation where my life is in danger, I'm not saying, oh, I never expected for this to happen. And even if I did, if I had a firearm on me, I can at least say, I never expected this to happen, but I knew it was possible. So therefore I had a gun on me and I'm glad I had a gun on me. That's the type of conversation you want to be able to have. You don't want to have the conversation of, oh, I never thought this could happen and oh, the horror. The conversation you want to have is, I never really thought it could happen, but I thought it was possible, so therefore I had a gun on me, and I'm glad I did. And now I'm standing before you, alive and unharmed. Now, keep this in mind. The good Samaritan, the good guy with a gun who stopped the bad guy with the gun, the cops are saying they're not going to investigate him. They're saying that they're not pressing any charges against him, and that they consider it to be a clean shoot. Now, that's not always going to be the case. You may find yourself in a situation where, to you, it was a clean shoot, but to somebody else, maybe not so much. Maybe you live in a place that isn't very conducive to concealed carry or the Second Amendment. And now they want to try to find a way to run your name through the gamut or charge you criminally or sue you civilly. So now what are you going to do? Now you have to spend all of this money to try to fight these things. And even if you win, you still have to spend the money to fight it. And I'm going to tell you right now, as an attorney, we ain't cheap. But that's why I like memberships like USCCA, because when you become a member of USCCA, you gain access to the self-defense insurance. And what that will do was alleviate a lot of the stress and the anxiety that comes with possibly being sued if you had to use your gun in a self-defense situation. There are different levels to it, but you can pick the level that you're most comfortable with. And at that point, now you have access to attorneys you wouldn't have access to otherwise. Now you don't have to worry about how much you're spending to actually fight the case, because that serves as the insurance. There's money there specifically to help you fight the criminal case and the civil case. So now that takes a huge burden off your chest and off your shoulders when it comes to carrying a firearm for self-defense. But the beautiful thing also about the USCCA membership is the wealth of information that is available to you once you become a member, and the type of training that's available to you once you become a member. The information on USCCA's website and their membership program, to me, is invaluable. So if you're interested in learning more about a USCCA membership, then put a link in the description section of this video and learn more. And to the people out there who think that we need more gun control or that gun-free zones keep us safe, especially gun-free zones that don't have any preventative measure like metal detectors or security guards or people checking people to make sure that they don't have guns on them too. Let this situation be a lesson to you. This facility was a gun-free zone. You weren't allowed to bring weapons on the property, much less in the building. For those of you who understand that in the Second Amendment, when it said the militia, it was talking about you, I have the perfect shirt and the perfect hat for you. The I Am the Militia design, which was designed to reaffirm the idea and the notion that the militia is the people, and therefore the people is you, and you're the only one who's responsible for your safety. So head over to shop.Mr. Noir and pick up your I Am the Militia shirt. I got hats, I got tumblers, you name it. And on top of that also, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell symbol and then hit the all button so that you get notified every single time I put up a video. Because if you don't do that, YouTube won't let you know when I put up a video. Then you miss out on all this awesome content. And then also sign up for my email and my text list, because I do a lot of giveaways and I do a lot of special deals on that text list. And I don't hear anybody saying, I didn't know about this. You weren't signed up to the text list and the email list. So be sure to hit the description and do that.